G'day, punters, and welcome to another episode of the Footy Form Guide podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Wally, back. We've only got a few rounds left now, back with my good mate, Harro. Harro, how are you travelling?
Really good, Wally. Loved the weekend of footy. It was especially the way it ended on Sunday.
Oh,
Probably one of the greats. So, made another Wednesday morning and another Wednesday. I'm looking forward to getting stuck right into it all.
yeah, mate. Very, very, very true. Sunday night, Naz, it was just incredible. No doubt we'll talk more to that when we come to the Saints game and the D's games. But, mate, let's get stuck straight in with what we did and didn't get right, our highlights and lowlights of the round just gone.
Yeah, mate. So we started off on with the Hawks and the Blues actually in the what do we call it? The Footy Form Guide Cup, and
That's what I believe it's
I think
officially called, yep.
Yeah, officially. And we liked Sicily, Impey, and Morrison in that, and also a Doherty goal. So that was a nice start to the round for us. You got the Doherty goal there. I think everybody was happy to see that. The Doggies, we had them with the minus 52 and Bramble. So a couple of nice little pickups there. In the Suns and the Lions game, we mentioned Buterick for 20. Now, he actually didn't get the role that we wanted him to have, but he still got there. He had 22, and that paid $3.40. We had Saligo was one we really liked, and he was a line of 19.5. He got 34. The Dacus brothers, they've been pretty good to us this year so far. We liked both of them, and they both got there. And also, we started our train that we're running for the last 22 favourites that we've picked out for the last sort of 4 or 5 rounds, and that was paying, I think, around about $1.80 if you shopped around and got the best value, and that one as well, mate. So all in all, yeah, some good highlights there for the weekend.
Yeah, mate. And where there's highlights, there's lowlights. What did we miss?
Yeah, so, mate, the big one was our best bet, and we got on Fremantle at 49.5 in the end
Oh, this
against
was sickening.
against West Coast, and they won by 49 on the head. They led by 61 points with about 2.5 or 3 minutes to go, and they coughed up 3 goals in the last 3 minutes and scored one themselves, and the bet loses by a half when they had 18 or 19 more scoring shots. It was a brutal one, and I think this year with the best bet, we're ahead of the ledger still, which is good. We had that 4 in a row, which put us well ahead. But the amount of near misses we've had in the best bet has just been unbelievable. It shows we're doing something right. When we're right, it wins by a long way. When we're losing, it doesn't mean we're wrong, but they're losing by fine margins, and that one was an absolute killer, mate. So easily our biggest low light for the weekend.
Yeah, great shout, Harry. That was sickening. I reckon that's about our worst beat of the year. That and the Cherry disposal, which Champion Data refused to give the punters. I think were the two worst. That worst because he got a toe on it. Let's be honest, Harrow. Pay the punters. He got a toe on it. All right, let's get stuck into some questions off social. Look, 2 things I'll address off the top. First one is from last week. We got asked about our future bets and what we look at. Look, I was looking last week. I've looked again this week. I'm telling you now, I'll be interested to know. I don't see a path for value in awards. I think Curtin's your rising star. I think Jeremy Cameron's going to win the Coleman. I mean, they should just shut that market and pay the punters. And then if someone else somehow does it and kicks a Fred Fanning score, then pay them as well. That's over. It's not happening. The Brownlow for me, I think that Dacos, we have seen when players maybe are a bit stiff the year before or they underpoll. He definitely didn't underpoll last year, but he was still a bit stiff. We've seen it a number of times where they overpoll the next year. I don't think he even needs to overpoll. I think that Dacos is in the box seat there, but I'll be keen to hear if you think there's a couple of I know that we like some others, and you can talk to that. So for me, it's just more around the flag winner. I don't think there's a lot of value at the moment, to be honest. I think that I still believe in Collingwood, and I think that if they get top 2, MCG, I don't know who's going to come and beat them on the MCG on grand final day. I genuinely don't think Adelaide can do it. Gold Coast definitely can't do it. Hawthorn, the Dogs, Freo, there's too many concerns there. Don't even know if a couple of them will be in the 8. Brisbane was the one I thought, but they're not going there. It's maybe for me, the one that is putting it all together. And if they can just get it all together in the final series is GWS. They're the ones, but we say it every year, Harro. I feel like it's the 3rd or 4th year in a row I've gone GWS. So future betting for me at the moment is not a place I'd like to play in at all. I'm happy a week to week. But I wanted to address it. Is there anything you like in any of the markets at all, that even if it's just something at a bit of value? And also, who do you think at this stage, if I gave you a crisp $100 bill, who would you be putting it on for the grand final?
Well, at this, I mean, we just saw Fremantle beat Collingwood on the MCG.
Yeah.
I feel like, and it's all, a lot of it's going to come down to injury list, who's fittest and healthiest and in the best form for that last 5 or 6 weeks. So I'm not looking at these sort of shorter price teams. Definitely, not Collingwood or the Cats. I feel like their price is probably a little bit prohibitive for sure. We've seen the Cats' form against some of the better teams hasn't quite stood up. Collingwood's form right now is not quite where it needs to be. Adelaide, they look great. It's just their finals experience, whether you'd like them. So I'd be looking at the bigger prices. And I definitely think if the Giants can hit finals with all their better players available, I feel like they've learnt a lot from especially last year. And the way I can see that is that if you look at the way the Giants exited last year, their 2 finals, they got overrun in both of them, overrun late. And if you look at what they're doing now, they're timing their games a lot better. So they're the ones that are now overrunning sides. So I really feel like they've learnt from last year. The other thing, I really like teams with really good key position players. And I feel like that Buckley, Taylor, Iden backline, and defenses win finals. So I feel like just man for man, I feel like the Giants, Himmelberg back there, I feel like man for man, the Giants could have like a premiership backline. So look, they're the guy. If I had $100 and I had to put it on a premiership, market, and I'm looking for value at a big GWS for me, mate.
Yep, great.
It's just whether they can get all their players. If they can get their players, because I know they've got a few injuries now. So that's going to be interesting for them. Brownlow, well, for me, the Brownlow, it's all going to come down to, how the umpires value, it's if they're just looking at the stat sheet and after every game and going off that for their votes, it probably is Dacos's. But he's definitely had quite a few games where, like, he's had 30-something disposals, but he just clearly hasn't been best on ground. But I think a lot of the models and stuff with their own, they're giving him a lot of votes in those. And we've shown that he does poll well. But I quite like Noah Anderson, mate, because I feel like he combines, he's the captain. He's in front of the umpires a lot. He has big games, but he also has big impact as well. Like we saw him with those 2 centre clearances the other week, win his team the game in that last couple of minutes. And I think he's just been underrated a little bit all year. We mentioned him earlier in the year, I think at about 50-1, which you think now, I mean, what a price that is. So Dacos probably going to be hard to beat, just how the umpires value, whether they're just going off the stat sheet or looking for more impact, will dictate how many votes Dacos gets, I guess.
Yep. All right. Very good. All right, mate. Let's get stuck into some questions. Actually, the other one I was going to address as well, because there's a few here. It means that our community is doing something right. We're over-indexing now on questions around people getting banned and accounts being shut, and blocked and all those sort of things. We get them on, like, there's a heap of questions on X. We get them on DMs. I've had a couple of chats with mates that are an acquaintance that sort of are going through this at the moment. Look, the bottom line is this. Tab's obviously got a promo with the +1. Yeah, it's obviously they're hemorrhaging on it. So if you're winning on that, bottom line is if you have a decent win on that and a +1 was part of it, they're just going to block you on SGMs. That's what we're seeing with them. In terms of all the other bookies, they're all the same. We've seen it across the board. If you win too much money, there's signs. It was interesting. There was one here from Anthony that actually put in. He goes, not a question but advice for people getting their accounts restricted. Do not bet big, i.e. to win more than 200. Well, that is the first problem. Is that if you want to win, then you almost need a heap of accounts. But with AFL, it's not like horse racing. You can get on 50 different, 60, 100 bookmakers and get a similar price on a horse and just get a bit on each one. AFL, there is only a handful that have good quality AFL offerings, if that. So we don't have, like, if you actually want to win some coin, you don't have a lot of choice. So you have to be able to win more than that. And that's a problem. Don't bet early lines. We've always said that, Harro. Don't bet too early if you think it's sharp. Also, I'll tell you right now, unders sharper than overs. They look at unders more. This is an interesting one, Harro. I'd never thought on this. Do not click on bet links. It makes it easier for the bookies to data match and they think you're part of a profitable syndicate. I didn't know about this because the books seem to be driving more social behavior and promoting to share your bets. So I don't know if that's true. I would have no idea whether it's something I can do, but some interesting ones there from Anthony. Is there any other advice, Harry, that you would say to people that aren't trying to be pro punters? Because that's what we're talking about. No one here's a pro. We're talking about people that just want to obviously get on a bet, win some coin. Can I ask, is there any other little bits of advice that you haven't given before that you want to drop on them?
I hadn't thought of that one either about the bet link thing because that's kind of a new thing as well. Only the last couple of years that's been around, hasn't it? So I'd never thought of that, but it might be they might just flag your account as you're following a tipster or something like that.
Yeah.
So if, for instance, I mean, I don't know what the tipping sites are, if they're putting out bet links to all of their customers. I don't know if that's something that they're doing, but maybe people who are following the Footy Form guide and clicking the bet links are getting flagged as someone who's just betting based off the information we're giving out, which is obviously people making a profit out of it. So there's that. But one other little one, which I think is worth mentioning, if you find a really rotten price about something, don't back it. It's you could even give them a call and let them know. I've done this before. I definitely did it with Top Sport, where they had a price that was way out, and you could back it, and you might make a few $100 or whatever, but they'll pick up on it, and that'll be the end of your account. So if you see a really rotten price, perhaps don't try and smash it and take that little bit of a win you might have. Just try and play even. Try and play fair. Is probably my best advice. And obviously that involves not betting too early. Obviously it takes a bit of the fat out of it for you, but if you want your account to last longer, then obviously just try and not take any really rotten prices and just try and obviously bet late and try and beat them on the day is probably my best bit of advice. Yeah.
Funnily enough, same game multis was the desirable product that all the books wanted their punters betting into, and Tab's blocking people because of it, because of this promo. But look, I've had it. There's so many comments around this, and they're saying, what alternates do we have? Now, my understanding is, and just verify this before you do, Lads, Neds, and I know Sportsbet do the fair go or the justice or whatever you want to call it, refund if a player gets subbed in the first half, not second half, and they'll refund your SGM or your bet. And if your SGM gets refunded, the whole bet gets refunded. Those three, Lads and Neds, are the same book, by the way. So just be wary with that. They're owned by the same people, and they're fully across what you're doing across each. They have full vision across both. Bet365 is the other one that does have a very good AFL offering, but the minute you beat them on price, your account will be gone. So I wish I had a solution of, hey, you've never heard of this bookmaker, go and get on them. But realistically, the AFL offering just isn't as big. I think that Also, it doesn't hurt to like actually bet across some other bits and pieces. Throw an NBA multi in there. Have a bet on the baseball. Have a little bit on the horsies. Just mix it up. That is one thing I would say. But yes, in answer to another
But
one, of course, we've been banned by Tab.
everybody says, "Oh, bookmakers and whatnot, they're scum. They're doing this, they're doing that." The landscape for them has changed actually a lot as well, and they're
Oh,
getting so heavily taxed.
yep.
This point of consumption tax and all this sort of stuff that they're having to tighten their belts, and that it's really has to be passed on to the consumer at some point along the way. So, I mean, they're just a business trying to make a profit like any other business, and they've got to do what they've got to do. But you also got to remember how heavily they're getting taxed now, and that's I think if you removed that aspect and just taxed them fairly, they'd probably be able to offer more to the punters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The only one that's really flying out of this is obviously the government. They're the ones.
Yeah.
So like, there's no don't. I'll tell you right now, it's not good business for any business who are flying to then go, let's for no reason just block a heap of customers. Like it doesn't make any sense, even if they're winning a bit, because eventually the house wins. Like some of the people getting blocked across the industry now are not winning. They're not pro punters. And then Tab does something, which is a great promo, but they throw something like that out there because they need to do something dramatic. It works, and then it works too well, and then they've got to stop everyone. And now there's a groundswell. Like if that comes out back next year, there will be an instant. It will be met with, all right, well, no one's going to be able to get on. Anyway, let's get on to some other stuff, some other things that we can look at. Robbie's asked, do we start doubling down on Brownlow favourites for the big game in coming weeks, especially players versus weaker teams? Bit more motivation, worked a treat last season. There's a point two of this question as well for me, which is I really like the idea. I saw what they did with Jeremy Cameron the other night. In these games, I'm not talking about finals. They're going to try and get him to 100 before the finals. Patrick Dangerfield has never handed off a ball in his life in an open goal. He handed one off to Jeremy. Like, I'm telling you now, they want Jezza to kick 100. They've even talked about it. So I'm backing Jezza 5+, 6+, 7+, 8+ every week for the next 4 weeks. But Harro, what about Brownlow? What about Dacos? What about Anderson? What about Sarong? What about Bailey Smith? The ones that can actually win it. Do we think that we should be getting around them and their output and betting their over disposal lines? Or are you happy just to go with, we will treat every matchup like we do every week for the rest of the season?
No, I think there's a bit in it. I think there's something in it from Robbie. And the other thing, what we're seeing as well, these teams who can't make finals now, they're mostly just focusing on themselves rather than putting a lot of work into the opposition. And so if you're a Richmond on the weekend, for instance, they put no effort into Dacos at all because they're just focusing on working on little areas of their own game, and they're not too focused on what the opposition are doing. So that sets up perfectly for a Dacos in that sort of instance. And so now you look at all these teams from 10th down to 18th that were all out of finals. And their focus is really going to be on, getting guys into roles they want to play next year, developing a game style that they want to play next year, building some confidence in the group and all that sort of stuff. They're not going to be focused on worrying whether Bailey Smith gets X amount of touches or whoever it is. So there's that. But then, the other games where you got, basically all the rest of the games between the top 8 now or top 9 are all huge. They're basically all mini finals. So I feel like we're a bit lucky to get that as well, which we don't get that every year. It's basically locked in. The final 9 are locked in, and it's just a big battle now for top 4, top 2, top 8. Those games, that's going to be a lot tougher for those types of players. So have a look at the fixture as well, and see which players have got the softer run home or the harder run home in terms of your player Brownlow type bets as well, because I feel like that'll play into it as also.
Yep, very, very good. All right, mate, another one. Oh, and this is half from Lockie and half from me, because I'm learning it and I'm still learning how to use it best. When using Bet Sniper Harrow, what settings and options do you find the most useful? Last 3, all rounds in the DVP, team stats, for against. Like, what are your go-tos in Bet Sniper without having to spend a huge amount of time on it?
Yeah, so I actually don't spend a lot of time looking at the ladder, where it's all green down to red sort of thing. I'll actually just click on the team and just because it gives you a breakdown of the players when you click on the team, what those players have been doing against. And I'll try and, if I'm looking at a certain player, like let's just say I'm looking at a Cozzy Pickett, I'll say, right, how did Shy Bolton go against them? And I'll try and match up that exact type of player.
Yeah.
That's more, I'm probably looking at it a little bit more in depth rather than just looking at the ladder and going, oh, this team concedes X amount to that position. I'm trying to actually identify the more, that exact type of player. It's probably little insight to how I'm using it.
Yeah, Harro, is that because like they don't always get right who are key forward is, general forward, midfielder, inside, roles change and all of that? So it's not always a perfect science of just going, okay, when you actually dive into the players, because I've done that a couple of times and gone, oh, I wouldn't have had them in that sample. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really good shout. And I didn't even think that, like matching up specific players. Ruckman, a lot easier with the rucks. You obviously see it, and you can see like what they're averaging. There would no doubt with that. But yeah, it's a good shout. It's a great tool, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed using the Bet Sniper this year, so shout out to them. And I think I know, I definitely know. I know we've got a referral link for it, but I know there's a lot of people who I've just told them about it and they've signed up as well, just through word of mouth. So, I think that the Footy Form Guide community is right behind it, and everybody's learning using the Bet Sniper, so it's a good tool.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, mate. Had a pretty rotten few weeks on the multis. What can we do to negate the drop-offs for certain players and identify tags earlier? What stats can we look for to identify bad performances or drop-offs? This is a tough one. Like, in terms of the tags, Harrow, I think that, well, how do you, we've spoken about this before, but you'll watch a press conference, you'll watch a presser, because a lot of the times they will give information in that we're going to put time into this player, or we're going to play our own game. We're going to go our midfield versus their midfield. Any other ways we look at tags? Is it just that and just looking at what other teams have, looking at the history of those teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it's a bit of a guessing game. Like you can't get it right all the time because the teams that are doing the tagging, obviously, they don't want the whole world to know either. So, like you looked at St Kilda playing the D's the other week,
Yep.
and Cozzy got the tag. Okay, now I probably wouldn't have guessed that. I thought maybe it would have been a Petrarca if they were going to do it. Look, and so it's just you got to look at the teams, look at all the matchups, see if they've got the right type of player, and go from there. Really, there's no exact science to it. You've just got to try and nut it out yourself, and you're going to get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah, this round we see an obvious one with Sydney versus Essendon where James Jordan will go to Merritt because Merritt's literally the only damaging player in their whole team, and he's their entire game plan. And James Jordan is about the best in the business at restricting that sort of player. So, like, you get that, but then there's others, as you said, like the Cozzy tag's smart. Don't get me wrong, but like at the same time, Petrarca would usually be the one you think they go to. So it's a great shout, Harro. All right. Jezza for 100 goals for the season. Geelong have some exploitable matchups. I think he can get very close. I don't think he'll get 31 goals in 4 matches. It's still a lot. We're talking about 8 goals a game. I think that he might get there in finals, but that is actually a nightmare scenario. You do not want a game being stopped for 10 to 15 minutes in the middle of a final while everyone runs onto the ground.
Do you reckon they'll still do the run onto the ground?
Geelong are going to feed him. Geelong will want this out of the way. They don't want to go into finals going, when's this going to hit?
Or might he do the who's the South African cricketer the other week who just pulled up short? Like, could Jezza just go, listen,
Oh,
don't make me the focus. Let's just play footy, boys.
yeah.
Or no, that's not.
It's a
I
bit
don't know.
different. He's going for 100. He was on, 360 something. Like, I know what you're saying, but I think this is why I think they're going to feed him. I don't think he'll get there, but they're going to do everything they can to get him close.
Let's have a quick look at their fixture. Let's have it because I know it's good, but let's just see how
They
good
get Port
exactly
Adelaide this week at home, and Port love to give goals up to key forwards. We know that. Then the following round, they get Essendon at home.
Oh, God. He could get it in 2 weeks.
So they're going to feed him.
Yeah. Well, they should try and feed him these 2 weeks. If it comes off, then it's in play. If it doesn't come off, then just forget about it. Because they could lose to the Swans if they were mucking around. Then they get the
Sydney's
Tigers.
I don't, and that's up there. I don't think he's going to go up there and kick 8.
Yeah.
And who have they got in the last round, Harro?
The Tigers as well. But the Tigers have got pretty good matchup for him.
Yeah, exactly.
As well. Like kicking more than 5 or 6 against the Tigers, maybe not as easy as it sounds. Like they could put Broad on him. I think Broad's not a bad matchup, or maybe Bolter.
It's these two matches.
So. These two, yeah.
They'll be trying to get him back-to-back double-figure matches. Anyway.
Yeah.
All good. All right, mate. Wary that we do actually have to start getting into some games here. Look, there's been a huge amount of questions. We try and hit as many as we can. I think we've gotten the bulk of them there. If we've missed any, I apologise, but he's up again next week. We get to them as much as we can. All right, mate. Let's get into the footy. And I'll tell you what. Last week, bit of a debacle in terms of fixturing. This week, at least, we start with the right way. Thursday and Friday, standalone games, both crackers, both with huge top 4 and top 8 implications. Doggies host GWS. The Doggies are $1.49, GWS $2.64. The line's 12.5, Harrow. GWS have a couple of key outs here. So Buckley's going to miss. Toby Green's going to miss and always goes well against the Dogs. And, of course, Kelly's going to miss as well. I think Green and Buckley are the two biggies there. But, mate, how do we see this unfolding?
Well, I think that, those outs actually just tips this in the favour of the Doggies. I've loved what the Giants have been doing in the last month and a bit. But just having those 3 key outs being away from home on the Doggies' favourite, home ground, I think, it tips it in the favour of the Dogs. So, but, you look at the market and they're, $1.50. So I'm kind of like, I'm not that interested in that. I mentioned it earlier, Wally, and the GWS, there's a really strong trend now with them performing better in second halves. I think they're definitely trying to time their run, and it makes sense, and I do feel like they've learnt from last year. And, I thought about it, and it's like you look at all the great race horses and stuff, how many of them would lead out from the start? Most of them would time their run, wouldn't they? And also, if you're coming out too hard and you're running out of puff, there's nothing you can do to reverse it. If you're cooked at the end of the game, there's nothing you can do at that point. Where if you come out a little bit easy and you get behind, there is something you can do about it because you've still got the energy, okay? So I feel like it's a much better way of attacking games. So, look, you could start to look back GWS second half at handicap. And I think you get plus 6.5 here if you want to. But otherwise, I feel like the Dogs at home will probably be the team to be with in this one. Having said that, the value's not quite there. Looking outside of that, look, I like sorry, just lost myself for a sec there. Oh, player-wise. Right, so the Doggies, they do concede to these good halfbacks, and GWS have got 2 of them. Ash and Whitfield. I think their lines are both 27.5. They both got 30 against the Dogs in their round 7 game. Here's one, a little tag we didn't see coming, and McInerney actually matched up on Ash on the weekend and kept him really quiet. I certainly didn't see that coming myself. But this week, obviously, I do like backing guys coming off a tag where you know they're not going to get it again. And so Ash would be that player. The other one is Finn Callahan, who he was tagged by Jordan. Before that, he'd gone 32, 28, 37, 29, and his line is 26.5 here. And we know the doggies don't tag. And one other one I've found is Harry Himmelberg. He's settled back into defence now after having a stint on the wing. And he's gone 23-23 his last two games. And his line is 18.5. So I'd be happy to have a bet around all those types of players, mate.
The other thing with Finn Callahan, let's not forget he went under his disposal line, but he won the medal. He had an incredible game. So he's in form. Even he was still damaging. So he is going to absolutely thrive being off the leash. So I reckon that's a great shout, Harro. I like it a lot. Now, Harro, I'm heading over for this one. Adelaide take on Hawthorn. The Crows are flying. They're $1.42. Hawthorn being given some respect here at $2.89. I think a lot of teams would be a lot bigger than that. I think that the inclusion of Mitch Lewis and the return of Will Day have helped that price. It's an incredibly tough job for the Hawks going over there. The line's 15.5. The Crows didn't beat much on the weekend. In fact, it's about as pathetic as a performance as I've seen in a showdown in some time. I'm trying to think of another one, but it was pathetic at best. But the way they played in the wet and the driving rain and how good they were, the Crows are on their way to a top two finish, maybe even a minor premiership. I think that they're absolutely flying. But I need you to give me some hope here, Harro. I need to find an angle of how we can, restrict the bleeding and hopefully, because if we get absolutely smashed here, our percentage is very close to others. It could spell the end for us. But I think that if we can get away,
how much do you love Adelaide? It feels like you're in Adelaide every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know. I do love Adelaide, Harro. I'm telling you, Adelaide. People have to understand. And I please ask anybody that listens to this or watches this or sees any of this that sees me on the hill on Friday night cheering for Hawthorn, just remember how much I love your city. Even though I'm going against your footy team, because just be kind. Just the stupidest decision of my life to go on the hill cheering for Hawthorn against Adelaide when they're flying. Anyway, mate, jokes aside, how do we look at this? Because the Hawks do look better now with this lineup, and they're at pretty much full strength. But the Crows just look so good, and at home as well.
Well, I feel like, Wally, this is something that you're going to see a bit of when we get these big games with heaps on the line. They tend to lean to lower scoring. Okay. And here we get the number 2 defense in the comp, which is Adelaide playing the number 3 defense in the comp, Hawthorn. They played back, I think it was about 7 weeks ago they played, and it was a 91-point game. So although conditions, they weren't wet, it was a night game down in Tassie. Conditions weren't ideal. Still 91 points. I mean, that's as low as it gets. So I feel like defense is going to be on the menu here. 165.5. That's around the AFL average. That's an AFL average game, that. And with the two of the 3 best, defenses in it, that's where I'm going. Okay, so I'm not too keen on the handicap here. I feel like it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a low-scoring game. So I feel like the Hawks will have they'll be within that margin, or near that margin towards the end, I would have thought. A few players that I've picked up on. So this game, not just in the total points, and we'll see in finals, the betting on player disposals when you're betting over, it does get a lot harder. So I've more looked to guys on the underside here that I feel like that are going, a little bit average and that maybe don't have a great matchup. And John Newcomb, Wally, I don't know if you've got any inside word, if he's carrying an injury at the moment, but his last 2 games, he's only managed 11 and 8 disposals. I know he got subbed out in the third quarter on the weekend. But he's either just really battling for form or he's carrying some sort of an injury. And he does get a tough matchup here. So I think you can get him under about 22.5 right now. I'd be interested to play that. The other guy is Carl Amon. He's been priced up at 22.5. He's been going a little bit lower with Sicily back there as well. And he's only over 22.5 twice in his last 8 games and doesn't get an easy matchup here in the Crows. We pumped up Rankin last week, either looking to play his goals or his unders. And again, he only got the 15 disposals and he's down to pretty much 0 CBAs now. So if you can get a line around 16 or 17.5 for Rankin, I'd be happy to play the under again for him, mate. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps us up.
So you're telling me that I've got to go to a game and bet on a low-scoring game where none of my players get any disposal, Harrow. You're killing me. But it's a very good insight, and we will play that, and then I'll separate myself before the game. But, no, great shout. It's definitely worthwhile. Look, in terms of Nuke, I don't know. But, yeah, it wasn't great what we saw the last couple of weeks in terms of that, but especially down in Tassie against Port.
I'll tell you who does look great. And I reckon he spent a bit of time in the gym when he's 2 years off, is Mitch Lewis. How good was he the other night? How's the size of him?
Yeah, he's big. So you just got to keep him on the park and, yeah, we'll be happy. All right, now, on Saturday, Melbourne West Coast deservedly cops the 1:10 Saturday afternoon spot. So some logic's coming back to the fixture this week. Melbourne's $1.08, the Eagles $8. It's amazing to me that a team can be $1.08 after what they served up in that last quarter on Sunday night. But the Eagles are the Eagles. The line's 41.5. It's being played in Melbourne. Look, I don't know how to look at this game, Harrow. I think the D's will come out and be firing after that. They would have had an absolute rocket this week. But, I mean, we're asking them to win by 7 goals, and it doesn't matter how bad the opposition is. They're garbage.
Yeah,
and we pumped them up a couple of weeks ago, Harrow. Remember we pumped them up and go, they're going better than we think.
Yeah. The D's, I just don't know how to catch them. I'm not too sure what's going on there. And they don't even have their own draft pick, so they've got no reason to be, like, finishing the season in a sort of slow manner. Like, mate, it reminded me a game of the IPL cricket the other day. I mean, you couldn't look at that. And I don't think it was bent or anything like that, but it bloody looked like it, didn't it? It was unbelievable what happened there. Anyway, so, yeah, I'm not too keen on backing the D's to win by a big margin. Who knows what they're going to be up to. Both sides will just play sort of to their level, I guess. But I've picked out a few little interesting ones here. Tim Kelly, he got a return to the midfield on the weekend. He had the third most CBAs, and he's had a long spell out of the midfield, and he ended up with 26 disposals. And his line's 20.5 this week. So I feel like that role will continue. And when he's in that role, 21 possessions is pretty easy going for him.
Yep.
The other one, great matchup this week for Maxi Gawn. His line's 19.5. You just got to think back to when these two sides met last time, and he had 35. So big game for Maxi, I would have thought, this week against the West Coast Eagles, who give up the most disposals in the comp to rucks. So I feel like, happy to play that. Cozzy Pickett, he's just one of my favourite players right now, and he's been good to us as well, mate. He got tagged by Windhager on the weekend, and he's still got 19. So that gives me great confidence that he can reach that 19.5. And I don't think West Coast have a player that can, like, a suitable matchup for him. So, be very interested there. There's a couple others. Look, Liam Duggan, he had a quiet game on the weekend. His line's down to 20.5. He's over that 8 of his last 10. So just be mindful that Marich actually returned to the back line, taking a lot of kickouts on the weekend. So that could be, something to look at as well. The other one that I picked up on was Track, who's one of my favourite players, Track. He had quite a low CBA game. They used him forward a bit more on the weekend. If that continues, you can get $2.25 for him to kick 2 or $5 for him to kick 3, and it's a pretty good matchup in terms of West Coast being a team you can definitely kick a bag of goals against.
Mate, very good. A lot for us to play in there. I like the disposal space. Melbourne allowing more too in recent weeks. Very, very good, Harro. All right, now what they've done on Saturday afternoon, and again, I think that they've given clear air to Brisbane on the Saturday night. So they've got two of those twilight games, which are both decent against not. Gold Coast v Richmond. Now, I've got a thought on this, Harro, and I'm really keen to see what you think. Gold Coast are $1.04. Richmond's $11.50. The line's 50.5 points. Don't get me wrong. Richmond have been arguably the biggest overachievers this year. I think that Adelaide, Gold Coast, they've shown a lot. Collingwood's return to form. I get all of that. Richmond were hot favourites for the wooden spoon. Markets were out that they wouldn't win a game. Their line was 2.5. They covered that in the first 8 or 9 games, whatever it was. They have taken a couple of scalps. Richmond have had a great year. However, it's starting to get to the point now where the season's getting longer, more and more players are missing. Gold Coast are flying. Gold Coast are coming up the ladder. Percentage is important. They want to get their top 4 spot if they can. They've got the game in hand. They're at home. Their tails are up. They've just beaten Big Brother in Brisbane. Gold Coast are paying, you can get as big as $11 for 100 points. And I want to be involved at that price. And then I'll also find a $5 line somewhere in the 70s or 80s. Am I crazy, or do we think this could be the game that Richmond just get absolutely blown out in?
Oh, look. You watch them against Collingwood on the weekend, and they stayed with them for a long time.
Yeah.
They're really not as bad. They just beat West Coast by 8 goals. They beat Essendon.
I know
people
all of
think
that.
of the Tigers, and they think they're actually better than West Coast and Essendon. So that puts them out of the bottom 3. But I understand, and I feel like any of these games for the rest of the season where you've got one of these top 8 teams playing one of these bottom 6 or 7 teams, you could just blindly back a 90 plus as long as you're getting good odds, and you're going to land a few of them. So from that point of view, Wally, I hear where you're coming from. You could also see, and we've seen this a little bit throughout the season, I've talked to it a few times, you get that revenge game factor where, you get the team that had, if they've put in a shocker in the early game in the season, we're seeing it quite a bit that they really aim up for the return game, and they put in a massive one. And obviously, I think Gold Coast had their worst performance for the season back in round 5 or whenever it was, and now they get the chance to make up for it. So, I couldn't have been more impressed with Gold Coast on the weekend. They were superb. So I'm hearing you, mate. I don't mind it. Where I've gone with this one as well is we've got the Tigers who concede the most disposals in the comp, and we just saw Collingwood have 430-ish disposals on the weekend, and so we're looking at a guy like Anderson. So Gold Coast, the Tigers, they let Dacos run around and have 42. They didn't put any pressure on him at all. If they're going to do that with him, you'd think the same applies to Anderson. And so him to have 31 disposals, mate, I'm pretty keen on that. The other guy, and you look at the Tigers, they concede number 1 in the AFL this season, the defensive ball user. And so that sets up quite nicely for Noble, who we've backed a few times this year. We saw Josh Dacos have 30, Duggan 31, Archie Roberts 31. In the last few weeks, and he needs 27 here. He's actually 11-7 at the 27 this season, so it's just an outright bet based on value. But you take the wet games that he's played out, which haven't suited him, he's 11-5 with the best matchup in the comp. So I feel like we've found a few avenues for the punters there, mate, and I don't mind your angle on a big margin, as well. I don't know if the 50 is value, but I don't mind the idea of having a big margin because it's going to, and we saw it already on the weekend. We saw 2 or 3 of them on the weekend already, or 3, I think. So there is one guy for Richmond that's been impressing me lately, and he's got a new role back in round 16. They put this bloke into the midfield, into a full midfield role, and that's Jack Ross. And since they put him into that role, He's gone 24, 25, 21, 16 and 23, and his line's 20.5. And Gold Coast don't mind conceding to mids. So
Yeah.
I feel like there's one if the Richmond fans want to find a bet on one of their own players, you could have a go at Jack Ross. He probably enjoyed having Taranto out of the team last week as well. Maybe he was a little bit more involved, but he's been going well with him there as well. So no problems.
Yep. All right. Great, mate. Yeah, I like that a lot. Plenty of angles for us to play there. All right. The other twilight game is Sydney versus Essendon. Sydney's $1.04. Bombers are $11. Talk to me, Harrow.
Well, and as we look at every game, mate, we look at the forecast and we're saying, I think, 10 to 40 mil forecast for this one. And when I get these wet games, look, I don't bother doing too much form because I just view them as a completely different game. And now the Swans are out of the finals race. It'll be interesting to see how that changes their attitude or their style of play or whatnot, whether they start putting some guys away for surgery, all that sort of thing. Will probably and maybe giving guys a bit of opportunity in different roles potentially as well. Now that they're actually out of the finals race, so you flip around to the Dons, and I think if a team ever needed the mercy rule, it would be the Dons right now. They're just they just can't wait for the end of the season, I think, and fair enough. So you look at their injury list; they're just they're really struggling. So a wet game makes it really tough. So this one I'll look mainly just to keep an eye on the radar. If it's we already know the SCG's in pretty poor nick as it is, so it could be a bit of a mud scrap type affair this one, and perhaps not the greatest betting event.
All right, no worries, mate. No worries. All right, Harrow, we move on to Saturday night. Now, Saturday night is a good one. Saturday night is Collingwood hosting Brisbane. These two have played in some great games last few years. Collingwood $1.64, Brisbane $2.27. The line 7.5 points. Look, Collingwood back on the winners list last week after two losses, which were almost professional losses. I feel they rested some players. They showed enough. They came back late. They're just doing everything you kind of want of your premiership favourites if they win this week. So if they come out and put on a clinic against Brisbane and go, hey, by the way, our training load's over. We're ready for finals. We've caught you napping sort of thing. We're on. Everyone's going to go, oh, shit. Like Collingwood is still the team. But if they get pushed here and some of these cracks show up again, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But, mate, looking at the angle, I mean, I think, is this a game where we sort of stay away from a day cost given Brisbane's mids, or is this a game where we think that both teams could go high? I'm interested, and then of course what you think will happen in the game. But I'm a bit sort of muddled on how to approach this one.
It is a tricky one, actually, Wally. Look, the lines don't really tag, so you could look at Dacos, but his line's up to 32.5 now. And you kind of got to know when to draw a line in terms of value. And the Lions, they're not a high conceding team in terms of disposals normally. Obviously, they had a shocker against Gold Coast, but does look like a bit of an outlier, that. So, I'm probably leaving Dacos alone now that his line's getting up so high. We've been backing him in soft matchups. This just isn't a soft matchup. I think he's played the last 5 times he's played the Lions. He's only reached that. He's only beaten that 32.5 line twice. One of those games was the last time they met when the Lions were off a 5-day break after playing in 35-degree heat. And they were clearly affected by that. So I'm really not using that game as a guide at all. And I look at the Pies form and, I do consider how teams are going against the line. And they've lost their last 3 games at the line, including 2 losses. And I think they've only beaten the line once in their last 7 games. So, and that was against the Blues, who we know are terrible. So, I look at that and think that the Pies form, and I've been saying it for a while, it's a little bit on edge, but I do think there's improvement in them. So, and when we're likely to see that, I'm not too sure. the Lions form before last week I was really impressed with, but then you got to think, what the hell happened on the weekend? And
Yeah.
what happened there? I couldn't work that one out. So it was a really strange, showing from them. They just, 11-goal loss. When was the last time the Brisbane Lions lost by 11 goals? So yeah, would love to know what's going on there. I couldn't work it out in a game that they got everything to play for too. So I feel like if they had have had a pretty normal performance last week, I'd be inclined to back them here, getting a decent start. But I'm probably just a bit conflicted and happy to leave it alone.
Okay.
The other area I looked at was Josh Dacos, and historically, like the Lions normally keep his type of player low, but the last 4 or 5 games, that's changed. We saw Noble have 31, Dale 33, Rosie 31, Ash 31, Whitfield 33 in their last 4 or 5 games. So I feel like what's happening there is the Lions are going more direct, where before they were doing these big chains around the back line, these big switches and playing a bit of ball control. I feel like they're going more direct to goal now, which is handing the ball over to the opposition backman a bit more than what they used to. So, and with a bit more space. So perhaps I would play Josh Dacos at Lions 28.5. One other guy that I found here who's just a super consistent sort of guy who won't get too much attention off the opposition is Will Ashcroft. He's got a line of 25.5, and he's over that 10 of his last 13 games. One of those misses being a 25. So Will Ashcroft's a guy I feel like I'm happy to have a play with there, mate.
Okay, so Will Ashcroft. It's going to be an interesting game. This is such a fun one on a Saturday night standalone, just to pour yourself a glass of red, maybe put a steak or two on the Weber and sit back and watch it, mate, on a nice winter's night. Let's head into the Sunday games now. St Kilda take on North Melbourne. The Saints are $1.26. North Melbourne's $3.90. I would suggest, Harro, I'm not a fortune teller. I cannot predict the future, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say this Saints game won't be as exciting as the last one. So I'm just going to put that out there. Yeah. There's no way. Anyway, mate, fire away. What do you think?
Yeah, so North, I'm just disappointed. I was impressed with them, what they were doing throughout the middle of the year. And the last 5 weeks, they've just completely bombed. And, I was enjoying watching them. I thought I could see lots of improvement and things were looking up for North. And then you just get what you've got the last 5 weeks. That's just been shithouse. So I can't be with North. Look, the Saints, on the other hand, they've been really good. They've played really good opposition in the last 6 weeks, and I feel like they've stood up. And obviously, a lot of it's down to how great their coach is, Ross Lyon, absolute legend. And, they celebrated his 500 games in style, I think, on the weekend too, after a great win. That looked like good fun, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you who will be rejoicing about North's decline, Wally, and that is the Hawthorn, who are holding their number at the moment, number 2 pick.
No, it's not Richmond. Richmond hold theirs.
Oh, Richmond.
Yours. Richmond have theirs, right. Harrow. We have your pick, so we're enjoying your demise. So basically, Essendon have Melbourne's. Richmond have North's, and we have Carlton's. So everybody thought that those 3 teams were going to be better than the 3 teams that have them. And all of a sudden, they're all diabolical. And the 3 teams that have taken that or been given that are just absolutely laughing. Yes, Richmond, that's right, Harry. Richmond have pick 2 and 3 in the draft.
So Richmond have the North Melbourne pick. So they've absolutely, killed it on the trade table.
What a year.
It makes you wonder what the North Melbourne recruiter, whether his job is safe, doesn't it, really? I mean, that just looks like an absolute blunder. So anyway.
Harrow, with moves like that, he could go and work for Essendon in recruiting for 20 years.
Love it.
So just a little drive-by there. Anyway, mate, let's get stuck into this game.
Yeah.
St Kilda North.
Look, I'll tell you where we've been having a lot of success lately, and that's the overs in Saints games, and it's been a nice pivot. I feel like from us as well, because the last 2 years the Saints have been the best team to back on the unders side, and we've seen that things have changed there, and we were able to change with it, and we've been doing really well backing the overs in Saints games, and I don't feel like there's any reason to shift from that now with North Melbourne giving up, cricket scores mostly most weeks. I'd be happy to play the over total points here. The Saints, they've been very restrictive disposal wise. It doesn't shape as a great game on the disposal front. And where they've been keeping teams really low is in the midfield. And I look back, and not many guys are getting 25 disposals against the Saints in that midfield area. And so you could look at an LDU. It's that type of player, especially, that's been going low. And he's got a line of 26.5 here. So, look, he's a guy I'd be happy to have a look on the underside.
Right.
Apart from that, playing the over total points, look, you could only be with St Kilda in terms of the line or whatnot. But I'm not overly interested in that. Would rather play those other areas, mate.
All right, mate, we've got 2 more games to go before we wrap up. Geelong, Port Adelaide at the Cattery. Geelong's $1.05, Port at $10.50. 48.5 point line. I'm happy to leave all that alone. I don't care about any of that. I am on Cameron watch. I want to find 5, 6, 7, 8. As many goals as a bookie will offer, I want to back up into to the double figures.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm telling you now, you're going to get a price. 6. You can get $4 or more for 6.
Okay. I think I did see PointsBet were offering. I backed it with Darcy on the weekend, and he probably should have kicked 7 or 8 too. But you could back the 7 and the 8 at PointsBet.
Yep.
I'm not sure that. I don't think. Oh, here we go. Actually, Sportsbet are doing it now. So
Great.
Jeremy Cameron to kick 10 is $34 at Sportsbet. If you feel
that's getting hit.
I mean, 10's a lot, Wally. But yeah, $34.
He kicked 11 against a team. I know Port's a better team, but a team that allow a similar amount of goals to key forwards. Port Adelaide's leaking to key forwards is disgraceful. The other thing is that they can come and bounce back as much as they want. I think the emotional wins and efforts are gone now from Ken. Maybe there's one left in the last round, but the fact they showed up and did that in a showdown, mate, I have confidence. I'm not saying he will, because Cameron can also find 4 or 5 behinds out of nowhere. We know that.
Yeah. But mate, you look at the prices. Yeah, 8 goals is $14.
Yeah, I'll be backing across. That's what we call a ladder.
A ladder. Yeah. Don't mind the ladder there, Wally. Yeah.
Okay. What else have we got in the game?
Yeah, I just sort of said here, like, Port have just, like, the Cats should, and I think they'll crush them. I don't see any reason why not. Port have shown a big propensity to just give up as well. That's and so if they get into a bad position here, the give up factor is just, it's on again. And actually, the Crows kicked 8 goals in about the last 11 minutes of the game on Saturday night, which was unbelievable, really, in those conditions as well. So it really, you got to just side all your bets towards the Cats, and also the over total points. I think conditions will be all right. The lines are in that mid 170s, and Cats games are going well over that most of the time. I don't think they'll have any trouble doing that here as well. Now, I mentioned Jack Martin last week that he's made the move up forward, and he got on the scoreboard, but he didn't kick his 2. But he's $5 to kick 2. He's going to be floating around up there as well. And also Tyson Stengel, he gets a good matchup this week, because Port, they don't have a great small defender, and he's $2 to kick 2. So however you want to play it, look, there's going to be plenty of goals to Cats players. It's whether Jezza gets them all or they share them around a little bit might dictate how this goes. But you can only really be, playing those types of areas for me, mate.
Yeah. All right, last game of the round is your Baggers travelling over to Freo. Freo's $1.14, Carlton $5.75. Freo $1.14 feels overs. I can't believe I'm saying that. The line's 31.5. That feels unders.
Yeah, it's so hard to, want to back up and back Freo again after beating West Coast by just the 49. That should have
I
been
know.
a 70 or 80 point win. Just so flattening. And the Blues are going probably a bit better than, a fair bit better than West Coast, I'd say
Yeah.
right now. But I definitely could only be with Freo. But another game where there's actually quite a lot of rain forecast again. So that does change things for me. Look, I look at what Cozzy Pickett did the other week against the Blues, and I feel like Shai Bolton is just that type of player. We backed Bolton on the weekend; he had 25, so he's obviously going really well. They want to get the ball to him, and so I think his line is around that 18, 19. I'd be happy to play, those Bolton areas. Jordan Clark, he's had a couple of sort of tough matchups the last couple of weeks and gone a little under. But he gets a really good matchup here, so I'd be happy to play him. And also the other one that I'm looking at, which maybe not so much from a betting perspective, but just to give the Blues fans a bit of positivity. I loved the game from young Harry O'Farrell on the weekend.
Yep.
He had a bit of a breakout game. He's only a first-year player. He had a fantastic game. So looking forward to watching how he progresses, going forward. But as I said, mate, another one with a lot of rain around, makes it a little bit tough to do the form on, but could only really be with Freo.
Yep. Perfect, mate. That is fantastic. All right, Harro, a swag of bets there for the punters to get around and us to get around. Should be an interesting round of footy. At least it kicks off with a bang. So the idea, mate, if you get Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, and there's 3 good games of footy in your barrack for another one, it should be a pretty good weekend for you. Mate, give us your best bet before we head.
Well, given that you're heading over to this one, Wally, I think that I'll put the best bet up in this game, and we're going to be under the 165.5 in the Hawks v Crows, mate.
All right, mate, done. All right, Harro, you've been great as always, mate. Look forward to seeing you next week, hopefully off the back of a better Baggers performance, and you never know, maybe even a Hawks win. Have a great weekend, punters, and we'll see you soon.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.